we go ahead and get the introductions started because we have some pretty impressive folks who are helping us with this session on transportation projects in the area. And the first person who we're going to start with, we're kind of starting at the state, the regional level, then the county level, and then to the city of Sarasota. But our first speaker is going to be David Hutchison, who serves as the executive director. Oh, first of all, I'm Virginia Haley with Visit Sarasota. Dave serves as the executive director of the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization, known as the MPO. His multidisciplinary generalist transportation specialist background spans more than 30 years, combining policy, planning, public affairs, and program administration. Before joining the MPO in 2011, Hutchison held key roles involving major land development projects, impact review, emergency management and hurricane response, tourism development, and interagency cooperation. Next, we will hear from Spencer Anderson, who's a professional engineer serving as the Sarasota County Government Public Works Director and County Engineer since 2018. He's been with the county for 22 years in various roles. He holds a bachelor's degree in engineering from North Carolina State University and a master's degree in engineering from the University of South Florida. The county's Public Works Department is responsible for the operation, maintenance, planning, regulation, and improvement of transportation and stormwater infrastructure within the county. Then we have Carolyn Eastwood. Wave hi, Carolyn. She is currently the Director of Capital Projects for Sarasota County. And in her current role, she provides leadership, management, and supervision to all elements of the county's capital improvement program, which is called the CIP, for all departments and CIP areas, including but not limited to utilities, transportation, stormwater, facilities, emergency services, and near and dear to our hearts, parks and recreation. Carolyn holds a license as a professional engineer in the state of Florida and started her career with the New York State Department of Transportation and then the Florida Department of Transportation before coming to Sarasota County government. She's been with the county for more than 24 years and has worked on several large-scale public works projects, such as the Cool Today Stadium and the Baltimore Orioles rehab of Ed Smith Stadium. Her bachelor's degree of science in civil engineering is from the State University of New York at Buffalo, a master's degree of business administration from the University of South Florida, Sarasota Manatee, and a master's of science degree in civil engineering from the University of Florida. And then we have two folks with us from the city of Sarasota, Steve Cover, who's the Director of Planning for the city of Sarasota. Steve came on board to the city near and dear to my heart in time to shepherd the whole Bay master plan through with our new Bay project in the Bay Park. He implemented the city's new Bay Runner trolley and bike share scooter share program and initiated the city's new public art initiative and historic preservation program. Prior to arriving, Steve in Sarasota, he was planning director for the cities of Atlanta, Madison, Wisconsin, Arlington, Virginia, Fulton County, Georgia, and Anne Arundel, Maryland. He has also served in the private sector, including managing principal for HOK Architects in Atlanta. He has his master's degree in both architecture and city planning from Georgia Tech, and also studied at the École de Beaux in Beaux Arts in Paris, France. And finally, but last but not least, Nick Patel joined the city of Sarasota in 2021 as the city engineer after working with the Florida Department of Transportation for more than 17 years. He is a graduate of the University of South Florida and holds a master's of science in engineering management and dual Bachelor of Science degrees in civil engineering and mechanical engineering. So welcome all. As you can see, we have the best of the best with us today. And we are really grateful to have your time. And I think what we'll do is Dave. We want to unmute you, Dave Hutchison, if you could unmute yourself. And then Lonnie is going to bring up the slides. If you can just help us, let us know when to move through those slides would be great.
All right. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Take it away, Dave.
Very good. Thank you very much, Virginia, and tourism stakeholders. It's great to be part of this. And I want to give you a very brief overview of the MPO, which stands for Metropolitan Planning Organization. And we are the regional transportation planning entity under federal and state law, and we help prioritize and guide the investments of certain federal and state funds within the region in a way that benefits our member jurisdictions. And you could advance it. I was trying to hit the advance button to the next slide, and I will trying to see if I can see. Oh, is that the next slide? Okay. I might have rearranged these. So we operate under a set of national goals and planning factors and some state planning emphasis areas in the state transportation plan, which also has to implement these federally mandated factors in what qualifies for the investments. And we do that through our what we call our long-range plan, which in this case, we're operating under our 2045 plan. That gets updated every 5 years. We'll be starting that process again. So as we go through this, if you think of things we should be considering that we're not, or you have ideas, we welcome. And one of our main reasons for being is to provide for public participation in investing, federal and state infrastructure dollars. You can go on to the next slide. So we're not going to cover each one of these factors, but these are what we base our plans on. And our MPO was established in 1978. MPOs sort of got their genesis back when they built the interstate highway system, and the public said, hey, what's going on out back? And the mayor said, I don't know, no one called me, and they should have put it over here. So the Congress in its wisdom created a mechanism for urbanized areas to have influence into the process to decide where the federal transportation dollars were invested. We're one of the fastest growing regions of the whole country. You all know that. You're making it happen for better or worse. But our 2020 census was about 840,000. We're now up to about 860,000 or even more, because that number is about a year old, April of 2021. And that's an estimate from the Census Bureau. So we're a 2-county MPO, and we do our planning on a regional basis. We're an urbanized area. You could go to the next slide. Our governing board is made up of elected officials from our 9 cities and the 2 counties. And we have also a representative from the airport board, and they are the decision makers of this MPO. Next slide. We also have a technical advisory committee, which is planners and engineers from our jurisdictions, all of them, and they meet and advise the MPO staff, and they advise the MPO board on issues of how do we manage this money, and it provides for some coordination and collaboration in the regional projects specifically. And again, the MPO's reason for being is to get funding for local jurisdictional projects within the context of projects that will help us meet those performance objectives. Go ahead and go to the next slide, please. We have lots of responsibilities. These are mandated responsibilities. And I would encourage you, if you want to know more, you can go to our website. But it's somewhat prescribed what we are supposed to work on, and it crosses lots of silos or disciplines. So we work with, planners and engineers, we work with emergency management. And one of our tasks that's in the statute and in the rules is that we support tourism and economic development. So how do we do that? Well, that's what I'll try to give you a taste of today, and also encourage you to get involved. Next slide. I think we've seen this one. We can go past it. And so I told you a little bit about our LRTP. I'm going to go through these next slides very quickly because every 5 years, what we do to update that plan is we go to the next slide, is we take a look at where is growth occurring. We take a look at every jurisdiction's plans, their capital improvement plans, their comprehensive plans, and we developed, in this case, scenarios as to where are we going to need infrastructure investments in the future. And you can go on to the next slide. Yeah, I don't think this was the very latest version because I had that slide at the end, but the next few slides show some of the types of data that we look at and considerations. The point is that we are a performance-based and data-driven process, so that it's not just where I think the money should be spent, or it's not even where one elected official thinks the money should be spent. It's a consensus process that must address the mandated performance measures. And luckily, these days, we have pretty good data. And we can go through these next slides. We have lots of layers of factors that get considered, such as where is congestion occurring, where is delay occurring, and how does that affect people getting to and from work or to and from local businesses, out to our barrier islands and tourism destinations. Where are there safety hotspots? Next slide. And we look at where growth has been occurring, where it's projected to occur. Next slide. Where employment is also anticipated to occur. And we work very closely with our surrounding MPO and urbanized areas, and with the State Department of Transportation. We are really part of a mega region, and that is from our area clear over through Orlando to the other coast, and we are impacted by what happens in those areas, and of course they can be a source of customers too. Next slide. So out of all of those considerations, the MPO's LRTP developed a vision map of various types of investments and projects of what we would do with anticipated revenues over the next 25 years. And this is the big picture of that vision and the scenario that we agreed upon regionally as to what types of transportation improvements and where they should go, we would try to get funding for over the next 25 years. And you can see that we've got investments in bicycle and pedestrian facilities, technology improvements on our systems, new roads or road widenings in some cases, and urban development projects that will help support our community vitality and the potential for two interchanges, one at the north and one at the south end of our region. Next slide. And after we pick all these projects that make sense and that will help us meet performance objectives, then we count the money, and guess what? We can only afford about a third of what we would like to see built. And that tells us a couple of things. It says, well, we probably aren't going to be able to all drive on open, uncongested roads in 20 years. We're still going to have some congestion. So we have to plan for that. We can try to influence and have better urban planning, like what we see in downtown Sarasota, for example, and in our other activity centers throughout the county. And we can improve the system so that it works for everybody. And with this slide, you can, if you look at those numbers, you can see that we're really talking about $1.3 billion in this funding that the MPO prioritizes over the next 25 years. And the next slide, what this does is it results in, and we're still working on defining specific projects. I guess that's what this slide is about. Some of the types of projects that we will be looking to support and that will come out of our studies. We only do studies to get projects that can actually be built. The next slide. The next 5 years of this planning process is reflected in our TIP, or Transportation Improvement Program, and the Florida DOT's 5-year work program. And you can see from this map of the $1.3 billion that's in the next 5 years, their projects are spread out all over the region, and many of them line up with projects that we have asked them to prioritize. And that will support mobility, traffic congestion relief, tourism, and economic growth. Next slide. How about, are there more slides after this? Here we go. Some of these specific objectives that we take into consideration when we develop our plan are these, the fact that we recognize in our area, the freight, heads and beds is one of our products, and that's freight for our region. And a lot of the freight within our region, you can go to the next slide, is related to serving the tourism areas. These got out of order, but we'll get to that slide in a minute. Bridges, very important. We can't have too many bridges. We are getting some of our bridges replaced. Bridges in Florida are generally in very good condition, but those are something that, we don't have to, the state has a monitoring process so that they try to make sure that bridges get replaced. And that's obviously very important for people getting into and out of our areas. Next slide. Freight's important, and we've linked freight to our tourism, and a lot of our Florida DOT friends, they really think of freight as mining and agriculture related, and we think of it as deliveries of food to our restaurants and supplies for our tourist community. And so we link some of our projects that we've prioritized so that to make sure that the freight to our tourist destinations is going to get prioritized, not just oranges going to turn into orange juice. Next slide. A couple of initiatives that are underway now and that we'll be developing specific projects for relate to transportation improvements that support community development, both in downtown Bradenton, Sarasota, and down in the south end of Sarasota County. Next slide. And another area that we are involved in involves the statewide Sun Trail system and the Legacy Trail and how it's going to be expanded and extended at both ends, as the Gulf Coast Trail is something that's underway now, and we expect lots of improvements in that facility that serves not only our residents but our visitors as well. Thank you. Next slide. Placemaking is really important in transportation and in tourism. Our jurisdictions generally do a fantastic job. The city of Sarasota in particular, with its roundabouts and the public art in the roundabouts, has gotten national acclaim and attention and recognition for these efforts. And I think my last slide is actually a recently completed project that
completed
from other speakers. And that's all what I have. And I will be happy to stay on this call and answer questions. And I, again, encourage anyone involved in tourism to get involved in transportation planning and help us update this plan in a few years.
Great. Thanks, Dave. I think now the next slide, we turn it over to you, Spencer to go through some of the transportation initiatives, and then Carolyn will follow.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. So again, my name is Spencer Anderson. I'm the Public Works Director for Sarasota County, and happy to be here to talk about a few of our initiatives within Sarasota County. Go ahead to the next slide. First, I would just want to talk about population growth in the county, and these are kind of neat slides to go through and see how the county has grown with its municipalities throughout history. And this slide shows the population centers of the county in the various decades and the geographic center of the county. And so that you can see how the population center is moving over time towards the geographic center as the population in the county itself expands to the east. And you'll see the next slide, please. This is development in the 1950s. So everything that's blue was built before 1950, and everything green was built in the decade of 1950 to 1960. So next slide, and you can just kind of push through these. This is the 60s development in green, more centralized around the coastline. And then as we get to the development in the 70s, starts to move further east. And you see a little bit of development that's really out east of the interstate as it is today. And then you start to see a little bit in the Northport area developing in the 80s as well. And then when you get to the 90s, it really does start to really expand out east with the green, which is the new development. The city of Northport really took off in the 90s. And then in the 2010s, the city of Northport really started to take off, and you start to see more development in eastern county areas, really along the interstate there. Northeast Venice started to expand, and also you see that Palmer Ranch area that's north of 681 there, and the continued movement east in the northern part of the county as well. And then in the 2010 to 2020 slide, this is as of 2020, but you start to see more infill development happening. You see Welland Park that really started to take off in the 2010s as well. So this kind of gives you an example of what we're facing. The next slide is our annual citizen survey, and it shows where the priorities are for the public. Population growth, new development. People are concerned about those initiatives in the county and how we're dealing with those. And transportation is always one of the top rated concerns or responses for the citizens in that survey. So this is a long-term survey, and the consistency in those issues is something that we do pay attention to and are trying to adopt and adapt to as we move forward. Next slide. So in our current transportation system, we've got over 2,300 lane miles of roadway, publicly maintained roadway. Now, that doesn't include all the private roadways that are out there within gated subdivisions generally, or some other private commercial areas, and 153 bridges. Now, the bridges are things you typically don't recognize until there's a problem with them. And we do very good, like Dave was saying, Florida bridges are in pretty good condition. The state and the county work very closely together to inspect these on a regular basis and hold ourselves to completing needed repairs and replacement when necessary. Next slide. So our development in the county and our transportation system is based on the county's thoroughfare plan. Those are the public roads that are determined to be required, and their lane configuration and their location, their general location. For most of the new roads, they are subject to a corridor study, but they guide our decision-making process when where a new road will go, what's required when new development comes in, and how we coordinate those things between governments. Next slide. And how are all those things funded? These are all the funding sources that we explore when a project is necessary, and also daily operations and maintenance as well. Gas taxes is certainly an area of concern as vehicles are more and more electrified. Our gas taxes do start to tail off. So there will in the future need to be serious consideration of a replacement mechanism for gas taxes. There was a measure, I think 2 years ago, in the state legislature to put a annual fee on an electric vehicle that kind of equated to someone driving 15,000 miles in a regular and internal combustion engine. It was like $200. So if you do the math at a certain gas price, it equaled out to be 15,000 miles a year. So those are some of the things that are talking about, including vehicle miles traveled. So you would be charged however many miles you travel a year. That's something we talked about in a national venue as well. So those things are coming. The amount of electrical vehicles on the road today certainly doesn't require that, but over time, we do expect that that will be a big point of discussion and determination. And then last on that list is our mobility fees. Private development is charged mobility fees. It's kind of an impact fee on their development based on the number of dwelling units and the configuration of how they flange up with the mobility fee policy. Okay, next slide. So what have we done with the funding? One of the things in that previous slide was surtax dollars. The surtax program, which the voters just approved by, I believe, 76% in November, is a significant, if not the most significant measure of funding local road projects in the county. We do partner significantly with the FDOT as well, but most of these projects you see on this list since 2009 were largely funded through surtax and mobility fees within local funding. And go ahead and next slide. So what are some of our priorities moving forward? These are our local priorities with the federal state implications. River Road and Stickney Point Road, there was a road swap there. And if you've been down to River Road between 75 and 41, part of that road swap was getting the state to be a partner in funding for the widening of River Road between 41 and 75. That's underway. It'll be 6 lanes between 41 and Center Road and 4 lanes between Center and I-75. It's a major project. I believe the cost of that is $47 million. The county put $24 million to that. And we're really looking forward to that project becoming fruition in a couple of years here. Another big one for me is working with the state on the I-75 and 681 interchange modification. So currently 681, if you're familiar with that, was the old terminus of the interstate. It's going southbound, and then 681 brought you down to 41. So when the interstate was extended down south, it didn't include an easterly or northbound access to 75 at 681. One of our other projects you'll see on the next slide is Lorraine Road, the extension of that south of Clark Road. You can go back to that slide. I'll look at a couple more things here. But one of the big parts of that Lorraine Road extension will be getting access to it from the 681 interchange. You have significant development that's happening on the east side of the interstate there, south of Clark Road, with Palmer Ranch and the Neal communities and Lennar homes that are all over there. So big infrastructure connectivity for our transportation network in the future there. And some of the other things you have here, 75, long-term widening to 8 lanes, and then longer-term widening to more than that over time. But you see River Road there north, which I mentioned earlier. Okay, next slide. And then our local priorities for local roads. We have several of these actually underway. Fruitville Road, I've got another slide, I'll show some more on that, but that design is underway. Lorraine Road North, the gap that is between Palmer Road and Fruitville, that is underway for design to create that north-south link there. Majorly important for us. Honore Avenue, widening between Fruitville Road and 17th Street, that is under design. Cattleman Road, Carolyn will talk a little bit more about the current project, but the next phase of that project would be widening from Palmer all the way to Fruitville to complete Cattleman Road in a 4-lane configuration, all the way from down Proctor up into Manatee County. Proctor Road, that is also under design, widening Proctor from McIntosh to Honore, the only 2-lane segment left of Proctor Road west of the interstate. And South River Road, a major item for us is figuring out how to complete widening of that evacuation route and raising it above the floodplain levels. Go ahead to the next slide. This is
Spencer, can you talk a little bit about the I-75 overpass first?
Yeah, sure. That's called the North Sarasota Multimodal Connector, is the fancy name we've put to that. And it is a connection from Calman Road over to Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. If you know where the water tower is, it would come across just north of the water tower. And that is designed to be an overpass over the interstate, of course, to make that connection and to improve east to west connectivity across the interstate without having to go through a major interchange there at University or Fruitville Road. Where we're at with that, we have a design has been started. The PD&E phase is, for all intents and purposes, relatively complete. We're waiting on the state to give us a final sign off on that, but actually SMR, or Lakewood Ranch, the Stewardship District is completing that work in association with the county and the state. As far as funding for construction, it's probably a $50 to $60 million project when we get down to it. And when we get to a point where that's a feasible outlook, we'll start partnering with the feds and also DOT. But right now, there is no funding for construction for that project. I don't really have a better timeline to provide for when that might be a reality.
Thanks.
Sure. Okay, next slide. So these are some of the improvements we have up here along the Fruitville Road corridor. Of course, we recently finished the Lakewood Ranch Boulevard connection from Fruitville Road along the interstate to connect the Lakewood Ranch Boulevard. That was a major improvement, it's getting more use every day. The next phase is widening Fruitville Road on the red segment there, location 6. That'll be widened from Sarasota Center Boulevard out to Lorraine. And then, like I previously mentioned, the blue road segment is that connection from Lorraine, from Fruitville down to Palmer. And Lorraine Road will be a major spine of non-interstate travel, north-south. If you go to the next slide, ultimately the project for Lorraine Road, I've kind of roughly highlighted it there, but that'll connect down to Laurel Road via Knights Trail and all the way east of the interstate. It'll hug up against the interstate close to 681. And then you'll be able to travel, all the way through Sarasota County from there up into Manatee County and to north of the Manatee River there. So a really big project, the connectivity when the interstate, as we all experience on somewhat unfortunately frequent basis these days of congestion, that'll provide great non-interstate reliever for north-south traffic. So some of the things we can do on the next slide outside of road widening is our technology. And I think Dave touched on this somewhat, but our traffic technology is becoming more improved every day. Our ability to connect data between vehicles and vehicles to our infrastructure, to know where volumes are becoming congested, and to be able to automatically, almost intuitively, have the signal system adjust on a need basis to handle large volumes of traffic where the congestion is more present. Sometimes we have adaptive systems that are in place already along University Parkway between 75 and I believe it goes all the way down to Lockwood Ridge. That's an adaptive system that actually adjusts itself through the day. Otherwise, we do have the ability to adjust automatically from a remote location. So implementation of technology is also a big focus where the cost of widening roads is prohibitive. And I believe one more slide. So our complete thoroughfare plan requires about $3 billion of investment. It's a long-term effort. The need of funding to do that comes from all those places I mentioned earlier. and the support of the public is extremely important when it comes down to making these projects happen. We do get a lot of people that when they're adjacent to a project, they don't want something to improve connectivity because it affects them personally. Maybe it's behind their home or around their neighborhood, and they feel like the increased traffic will be a detriment to their personal quality of life. We just need as much support as we can and understanding of how these projects do improve the quality of life for the entire public. That's all I have. Thank you.
Terrific. Thank you, Spencer. Carolyn, you're going to give us an update on some existing projects, correct?
That's correct.
Super.
You know, as Spencer mentioned, you know, he kind of gave you the overview of all the various projects that we have coming in currently and in the future. But there's a couple of projects I know of interest that have been going on, maybe taking a little longer than expected. So I wanted to just go over those with you guys today. So the first one is the Bahia Vista Parallel Force Main project. And, you know, originally this project was expected to be completed, I think about a year ago, roughly. But right about at that same time is when we ended up terminating the existing contractor for cause. They were not clearly performing well. The county, as we do, you know, gives a contractor every opportunity to comply with the contract and the various standards to meet the project objectives. And unfortunately, the contractor was not able to do that in this case. So from there, once the county terminated, a couple things. One, we had to work with the contractor's surety. They tried to get another company or contractor to come in to complete the project. That, you know, failed. And then the county went forward with rebidding the project to find another contractor to finish the work. There wasn't a lot of work completed, but unfortunately, some of the work that was done was within road rights of way, of course, along Beneva Road and Bahia Vista. And unfortunately, because the work was uncompleted, it was not safe to open the road back up for traffic until we had a new contractor on board. And of course, the good news is that the temporary paving for both Beneva and Bahia Vista has been completed. I know it's been a long road. Now, keep in mind that this current contractor will continue to work in those areas when they get to that point for further pipe installation along both Beneva as well as Bahia Vista. The actual construction contract completion date is May of 2024. We're hoping that they complete before then, but that's what they have in their contract. It is a local contractor working on this project. We've also obviously coordinated amongst the different departments because this project is a utility project. We're installing 2 miles of a 24-inch transmission force main. And part of this project that we've coordinated with Public Works, Spencer and his staff, and will be resurfacing in the general vicinity once the utilities installation is complete. So we do try to minimize, you know, as much as we can, the traffic impacts. But in this case, there's still quite a bit of work to do. And we will do everything we can, obviously, to minimize those impacts. I'm not sure if you want questions now or as I continue to move through.
Why don't we, go ahead and move through, and then
Okay.
at the very end, we will. Thanks.
Sure, sure. Another project of interest is our Cattleman Road project. This project is what we used to call our Cattleman Road Phase 2 project. So it goes generally from where Bahia Vista, Cattleman at Bahia Vista was already improved. It will then widen the existing 2-lane Cattleman Road up to Packing House, also improve the Palmer Boulevard intersection, as well as improvements on Packing House, and then also improvements to Palmer Boulevard from Jackal to roughly where the I-75 overpass is. So that contract, we've met with businesses in the area prior to construction. We've been keeping them informed throughout the construction. This contractor is behind schedule, absolutely. And so what we have in this contract, well, all of our contracts, we have what's called a liquidated damages clause. And what that means is that when a contractor does not complete their work within the specified time frame in accordance with the contract, there's certain dollar amounts that are assessed against them for every day that they are late in completing. So, we will assess liquidated damages or the, fees against the contractor once, final completion has occurred and everything has been sorted through as to how much time they were over the contract. So right now, that's just something that we're working with the contractor. But they have made some headway, I would say, within the last probably 4 to 6 weeks. If you've been out that way, they've installed the roadway lighting, they've installed sidewalks, they've done some paving out in the area. They're currently working actually east of the I-75 overpass on Palmer, installing some drainage pipes. So they are making headway, albeit they had a very slow start to this project. So they're trying to make up for time, and we'll see kind of where they end up when all is said and done. Next slide. So another thing, and this link is live, but I don't know that you want to click it here or if the slides will be provided, but
We are going to post the slides.
oh,
afterwards.
fantastic,
Thank you.
fantastic. Great. So this particular link will take you to what we call our Projects in My Neighborhood webpage. And so as you kind of see there, there's a project information sheet about the Bahia Vista Parallel Force Main. When you click on this link, there is a whole list of projects that we're currently working on. It's not every single project we're working on, but quite a few of them. And these sheets are updated on a monthly basis. So and this is at our, scgov.net webpage. So it's available to anybody in the public to go and see the updates on a monthly basis. It gives contact information and things of that nature. So it's very helpful. And then on the next slide as well, the other thing that we have is what we call our construction 1 week look ahead report. Again, this is readily available in a slightly different location on the same web page. And so what we do is any project that's currently in construction that we are working on, we will have an update with, again, contact information. So that if someone has questions, they can certainly contact the project manager for the project. And also of kind of interest, our construction 1 week look ahead, we also coordinate with the other entities in our area. So FDOT includes their project updates in here. FPL, sometimes they might have projects, they include their updates, the other municipalities as well. So we try to have everything kind of in this one report. Any construction activities going on, to the best of our ability, we try to capture within this report. So this is also readily available to the public as well. So go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was saying this is great. I have to say, I didn't even know this existed. And since I got your slides last week, I was checking it out. It's very, very helpful.
Oh, great. Fantastic. Yeah, this is the last slide I have. But like I said, there's a lot of project information out there that we're currently working on. And certainly, there's people available to answer questions on anything specific. But thank you.
Great. And now wrapping things up, we're going to drill down to the city of Sarasota. And I wasn't sure, Nick, are you going to present these slides?
Yeah, Steve and I both are going to do it together.
Perfect, perfect.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I'll turn it over to Steve to kind of get started.
Yeah, just a general introduction of the two of us. Steve Cover, Director of Planning. Underneath our department, we have land use, development, and connectivity, historic preservation. Actually, we have also public art, economic development, sustainability, and parking and housing. So we've got a lot under our department. But today, obviously, we're going to be focusing on transportation. Nick?
Yeah, I'm Nick Patel, and I've been with the city for about 1.5 years, and we're just going to cover the high-level CIP projects that are in there. But under my department, I cover the capital projects capital improvement program. I handle the surveying side of it, the transportation planning, as well as the maintenance and the engineering side of the city of Sarasota under Public Works. Next slide, please. So to cover some of the projects last year, the commission approved our CIP projects totaling of $47 million. And so I am going to break down as to what was approved. It was growth and development, environmental preservation and sustainability, resident and neighborhood updates, wastewater systems, drinking water systems, city-owned facilities, and parks and recs. And that encompasses about $47 million worth of projects. And specifically under environmental preservation and sustainability, I'll cover the Smart City Initiative. We're spending about 5.5 million, over 5.5 million in that aspect of it. Under residents and neighborhood, we're spending over 5.2 million in that area. And some of the areas are bridges, street reconstruction, sidewalk construction program, citywide school zoning upgrades, ATMS projects, which are the technology-based projects, which are covered under some of the Smart City Initiative, citywide traffic calming, traffic signal rebuilds, neighborhood improvements, green canopy and street tree planting program, as well as community redevelopment upgrades in the Newtown area as well. Next slide, please.
Yeah, in this area, growth and development, we have a whole series of projects that we're currently working on. Obviously, an upgrading of 10th Street and Boulevard of the Arts, which will be a major change, a major upgrade to both of those streets. Those are both east-west streets. Also, the Legacy Trail Network. Obviously, we're a key connection both from the north and the south to link the entire trail together. And so we're utilizing multimodal transportation impact fees towards that. And also 375,000, 500,000 potential grant and multimodal transportation impact fees. We've also done improvements on Ringling Boulevard, and we have some future roundabouts. So actually we will be coming along some of these streets still they're pretty much into the future. We have a MERT project on School Avenue, and pedestrian connection improvements on Serena Street. And then taking a fresh look at the St. Armand Circle to really upgrade that. It's been in its current state for a long time. We think we have an opportunity to not only modify that, but improve it even more. So that's a big focus of the city. Next slide. And then, as mentioned before, we have a whole series of public art installations. Primarily, our focus is on our roundabouts. We have 2 approved already for 14th Street and 10th Street. The blue vase-like structure that actually is proposed for 14th Street, and then to the right, the seagrass type sculpture that's proposed for 10th Street, and then we have finalists selected for the Fruitville roundabout, and then ultimately we will have a public art piece in the Gulfstream roundabout. That's still a little bit far away, but ultimately we'll have a series of 4 roundabouts that we think not only are going to be improvement, obviously from a transportation standpoint, but from an aesthetic standpoint. I know when I first came here at the city, when I came down for my interview, I got picked up at the airport and we went down 41 to downtown. And as we're coming into downtown, I'm going, what is this? This is a major entrance into the city. It should be spectacular, not only from a road design standpoint, but public improvements, sidewalks, landscaping, and sculpture. And that's exactly what we're doing. Next slide.
So one of the things that that we're going to be talking about a lot in the city in this next couple of years is complete streets concepts. And really complete streets is really to ensure that whether you're walking, you're biking, you're using e-scooters, or you're using a bus or a vehicle, you want all types of users to feel comfortable driving the corridor. So recently, one of the projects that we first implemented within the city of Sarasota is Ringling Trail. Ringling Trail really is to accommodate all kind of users in there. And really, Sarasota County extended the Legacy Trail into that this past March of 2022. And then we ended up accelerating our project, Ringling Trail, from Legacy Trail all the way to Orange, to try to ensure that there's a connectivity from the trail. And ultimately, our goal is to connect it all the way down to the bay, to the Bay Park itself, and also down to the Barrier Islands. Some of the other projects we're working on right now is the 10th Streets and Boulevards of Arts Complete Streets project. Our plan is to really transform those two corridors, especially since it connects to the Bay Park itself. And our plan is that in order to leverage these transformational infrastructure projects, we have to take advantage of the infrastructure bill that's recently passed. The difference between this infrastructure bill compared to previous ones is that you have to provide local matches for these. And our plan is to really focus on try to transform the corridor for all users, as well as leverage infrastructure funds to do that. So that ultimately require not only city funds, there could be some opportunity for us to partner with the county as well as the state to provide some leverage for infrastructure bill matches that we need. And so 10th Street is one of them. St. Armand's Complete Streets is another one. And we have many more in the works, but these are some of the few projects that we plan on working on at this point. Next slide, please.
And as a lot of you know, this past March, we kicked off two different transit options in the city of Sarasota. The first being the trolley called the Bay Runner, which runs from the easternmost point of Main Street, down Main Street, and then across the Ringling Bridge over to St. Armand's, by the beaches, and then all the way out to the park. The ridership numbers have really been phenomenal. We're over 105,000. We're probably close to about 110,000 now.
Wow.
Riders, for the Bay Runner. Really interesting. I've gotten on the Bay Runner a bunch of times. I always like asking people why they're taking it. Really interesting. Obviously, a lot of tourists will take it, but a lot of residents do as well. I know I met one couple. They lived in the northern part of the Rosemary district. They walked to Main Street. They hopped on the Bay Runner, went to dinner at St. Armand's, took the Bay Runner back, and then walked back home. So just get some interesting feedback. But we are still finishing off our first year with this program. We've got 2 more years where we have significant state funding. So obviously, when we get closer to the 3rd year, we're going to have to kind of assess from a financial standpoint how we're going to continue to run this. Because it's been so successful, one of the things I would like to look at, and we don't necessarily have to do it right away, but potentially run a north-south route of the Bay Runner, which would go down South Tamiami, go north, and eventually it could link up with the airport, which I think would be really an interesting connection. And then our bike and scooter share program, this has been really even more successful. We're pushing about 130, 140,000 riders with this program. That's also since late March. The company indicated to us that our ridership numbers are actually greater than St. Pete.
Really?
Yeah, really interesting. They're amazed at the usage that they're getting. And to be honest with you, we were a little worried with this in the beginning because we've seen what's happened in some other cities, but we instilled some pretty tight constraints, and the vendor has just been superb, and tracking vehicles, putting the back in their stations, and it's really been a huge success. And this is something that we obviously want to continue. The city does get revenue from this program as well, so that's a plus. And then finally, this is a little bit terms of timeliness. It's going to take a little while, but we're seriously looking at creating a water taxi system, not only within the city, but hopefully in the future, maybe we could link up with other jurisdictions. And this is something that the commission has a tremendous interest in. We do as well. We've done some preliminary feasibility studies on this, and we think it can work. So that's also something that we're looking to pursue in the future. Okay, next slide. And of course, everybody's aware of this. About 5-6 years ago, there was just a plan that was introduced to implement a spectacular park and arts location. And so the commission approved it. And as a lot of you probably know, phase 1 has been completed. That's the upper photograph, which has been, and they just had their grand opening in October. They had a 10-day festival to celebrate this. And boy, the momentum has just built up tremendously for this. They're just going to continue to work. Next plans are along the bayfront to make improvements all along there. And then on the north side, just on the south side of the boat ramp, that picture, the second one down on the left, is improvements that will be made there. Ultimately, there will be restaurants and maybe some other uses that will encircle that inlet there where the boat ramp is. And then along 41, there'll be improvements for most of those buildings, existing buildings along 41, major improvements, creating plaza areas and smaller performance and activity spaces. And then of course, ultimately, maybe 5 years down the road, a brand new performing arts facility, which would be located kind of in the northeast part of the site, where there's currently parking lots. Hoping that will be a spectacular performing arts center. And then as also part of this, more parkland, but also an outdoor amphitheater that will look out over the bay. So big plans here. Been really successful so far, and we certainly want to keep the momentum going with this project. Next slide.
On the east side of the city, we're working on the Bobby Jones, the golf club itself, as well as the wetland restoration. This is a partnership with Sarasota County. We're working with on this project. The other thing we're looking at right now is to connect the existing Legacy Trail, the Sun Trail program that Dave talked about earlier, as well as the Florida Gulf Coast Trail. We're trying to get a connection from the Legacy Trail all the way up to the county's park, future park that's going to be on 17th Street. And currently we're working with the county and Lands of Public Trust and MPO, as well as DEP on alignments and how we're going to connect it. And ultimately it's to connect to the connector that Spencer talked about, which is going to go over the interstate with a multimodal connector, is to connect all these pieces together so we can have the Florida Gulf Coast Trail connected. So that's in the works as we speak. And we're still in the planning stages. We do have all the right of way for this specific project. Is just leveraging funding and providing partnerships and moving this project forward. Next slide. So as Steve talked about some of the statistics on the Bay Runner as well as the e-scooters, what I've noticed in the short amount of time I've been at the city is that since we've implemented the Bay Runner in March and we implemented the e-scooters in March, we've actually seen an increase in numbers of users that use that system. So really the city grid is really evolving, and we're not so much auto-centric. We're trying to look at all modes of transportation. And really this ultimately, if we implement the multimodal options, the transit, the e-scooters, and eventually, hopefully the water transit, hopefully these multimodal options will help alleviate congestions, throughout the system within the city. And that's our intent, is really to try to get tourists and other users on transits and other multimodal options, as opposed to getting in a vehicle and traveling, all that. So in order for us to really see how this is impacting the city, we really have focused our energy in the Smart City Initiative. And this is one portion of it, the connected automated vehicle technology. We got a grant from FDOT to try a pilot project for 15 intersections. And our plan is to ultimately implement similar technology to what Spencer was talking about to our 91 intersections within the city. And this is also going to give us good data for us to determine what's happening with e-scooters, with the trolley and cars. And it really will give us some real-time data, but it's also going to help with safety. How is this going to connect to, the electric vehicles or the smart vehicles that we have? It's going to be, this technology will be able to communicate with that. So for example, if a pedestrian were to jump out onto the street, this technology will communicate to the vehicle to slow it down. So it will slow down and it'll alert the vehicle. And it's real-time communication. So for all that, we need to upgrade the infrastructure. And we're looking at approximately $5 million to help improve that. The other part of it that I want to talk about is the city is very focused on water quality, sea level rise and resiliency, and also red tide monitoring. So we've partnered with Moat to really get a one-stop shop, which is called the Beach Monitoring website. It's going to be a website that's going to be put on on the city's website, where you can look at the current. It's going to be everyday thing where you'll know if there's red tide out there, what's the temperature like, what's the quality. It's really going to help improve tourism and be able to get everything at through data, through your mobile app and that aspect of it. So with that, that's all I have within the city, unless Stephen, you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that's it. I think you covered it, Nick.
Terrific. Terrific. Well, at this point, thank you very much. I have learned so much in this past hour from all of you. I think we can go ahead and stop screen sharing. And I'll ask if anyone has any questions or comments. You can either put it in the chat box or take yourself off mute, raise your hand. Let me know if you have any questions. I will say I was amazed at how quickly the city transformed Ringling Boulevard. It seemed to happen overnight. It may not seem that way to you, and I have just seen so many people on bikes, going from the Legacy Trail to downtown. It's great to see. Well, thanks, Tim. Tim Self who's on our board of directors, said excellent presentation. Thank you all. Thank you all. Well, if we don't have any further questions, we will go ahead and share this combined PowerPoint presentations on our partner portal. I'll say on behalf of our staff, one of whom was rear-ended on Fruitville Road last week, that we appreciate everything that you've been doing to help improve our transportation, improve the safety. We love everything that's going on with the trail systems, and I know we're very excited about having that crossover eventually on 75 next to what's known as My Water Tower, since it's Visit Sarasota. But all of those things are something to really look forward to, and we really appreciate the information that all of you have shared today. So with that, we will say thank you, Happy New Year, and thanks to our wonderful speakers. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.